Hey guys, welcome back to another Genshin Impact video, and today we're going to be doing an updated tier list for Genshin because it's been, I think, over a year since I made my last one. But this time around, we're going to be doing just the 5 stars. Reason for that is there are way too many characters to talk about, and if I were to do a tier list on the entire roster, the video would probably be like an hour and a half long, and I think for the most part, when it comes to 4 stars, you got like just a dozen that are really good, and then you have a bunch of others that are like either gimmicky or so, and then you have a bunch that are trash. So I think it might be more interesting to just talk about the 5 stars for this video so I can go a bit more in depth, and also because those are the ones that actually require, you know, a significant amount of resources to obtain, whereas for 4 stars, most of them can be obtainable. Whether it's easy to get them to C6 is another matter entirely, but for this video, I think it's better to do just the 5 stars, and then if there's enough demand, I can do one on 4 stars. So this time around, we have 6 tiers. Top tier is highest pull deployment values in the game. I'm going to try to look at this on the basis of what is most optimal to be pulled for, and or I guess invested in. It's kind of hard because like on one hand, you have some characters that are very strong, but you don't necessarily need to go out of your way to get them because you can make do with other options. And then if we talk about strength, you have characters that are not exactly the most powerful, but still extremely valuable, so that can skew things a bit. With that in mind, I'm going to try to do a balance of both and kind of evaluate the character more holistically. So moving on, we have excellent, build them if you have them. Decent can be useful if you lack many of the excellence. Niche, situational, and or team dependent. That can either be top tier niche or low tier niche. So when I say niche, I don't necessarily mean they're bad, because a lot of people have this connotation that niche doesn't mean all purpose or all covering. Some characters are extremely overpowered, but they can only function on one specific team and hyper-specific characters, which doesn't impact their practical value, but it can impact their, I guess, accessibility. Then you have average, which is usable with significant investment, or if you don't have any of the ones above, and then subpar. They're generally not recommended. They have too low of a pull or deployment value because they get outperformed by too many characters. Alright, so with all that said and done, let's actually get started, and the first character will be Jean. Jean is, I would say, excellent. Now, a lot of people associate her with just Farina, but I think even before Farina came out, she was already a decent character, right? Like if you were to think about what purpose Jean serves in the meta and the kind of things that she brings to the table, she would already be here. Not the best character by any means, but certainly not unusable. And since now there are ways to channel her healing utility in a more offensive manner, that's when we'll put her in excellent. So I'll leave her there for now. Next character is going to be Mona. I'm putting her in niche. I'm inclined to call her niche because technically she still has a use, but I'm not really sure because that niche has lost a lot of practical incentive in the current meta. At the very beginning of the game, she used to be very focused on the one-tap vaporize, damage per screenshot kind of thing, but now there are many characters who can do that without her, and so she kind of moved into freeze because her illusory bubble doesn't get popped by frozen characters, so you can kind of extend the duration if you were to use it with Ayaka or Genyu or someone like that. Freeze right now is not that great because there are so many enemies out there who are immune to freeze, and also just a cryo element in general falling behind in terms of damage relative to the other elements. So Mona's in a weird spot where technically she's not a bad character and she can still more than be useful in the situations you would want to use her in, but circumstantially the situations that she does thrive in are not in high demand right now, so I'm putting her in niche, and I think we'll have to see what happens from there. Next character is going to be Diluc. I'm going to put him in decent. Diluc has been struggling, right, in recent times, and he hasn't really been able to keep up with the increase in pyro DPS characters like Hu Tao, well not Hu Tao, but Linny and Arlecchino and even Gaming. But now that we have Xinyun, he's actually pretty serviceable right now. I don't think that he's the most overpowered character out there, but now that you can actually weaponize the insane base damage on his plunging attacks, he's a pretty powerful character again, so I think he's a pretty respectable one. Next one is going to be Kuting. Kuting is, I would say decent. She got buffed by Dendro fairly significantly and continues to be a serviceable character, but I do think the hypercarry meta of 4.0 has brought her down a bit. That's not to say Dendro reactions fell off, it's just that right now, though she did get a boost in version 3, the power ceiling of the game has gotten higher again, so now she's back to where she was in a kind of okay position. Again, she's not bad, but definitely has come back down a bit following her second wind in version 3. In her defense, she's a standard banner character, so it's not really someone that you're going to be prioritizing going after anyway, so I don't think that really hurts her in any capacity. Same goes for Diluc and Jean and Mona. You'll eventually get them if you play long enough, and so their accessibility is less considered relative to other 5 stars. Qiqi is going to be subpar, low deployment value. I don't think this needs to be explained. I've covered her extensively on my channel. Many channels have covered her extensively. She's just not a very good character. In terms of healing, there are so many better solutions than her, and in terms of freeze or any kind of cryo application, there are so many better options than her as well. Next character is going to be Venti. Venti is going to be in niche. I would have actually put him in excellent or even top tier if this was like back in version 1 and everything was just Venti ultable, but in this day and age we have too many enemies who can't get pulled in and crowd control, or just every chamber or domain having mostly boss enemies or heavy enemies. So Venti has lost a lot of his all-purpose, all-covering kind of playstyle and has since become a niche. When the niche is called for, he's back to being, the best character in the game. But outside of that, not so much. Klee, I'm gonna put Klee in niche as well. Actually, you know what? Okay, it's tricky. She has technically 2 teams that you can use on her. You can either put her as a pyro driver for forward vaporized if you're playing her and then 3 hydro characters to follow up with, or you can either play her in mono pyro. So she has more than one team that she can be used in, which means technically she's not niche. However, I still think that if we were to consider her, in the context of other characters that are out right now, I don't know if I want to put her in decent. If you can put up with their playstyle, right? If you can put up with how uncomfortable she is to play or her clunky gameplay, she's actually not that bad. So if I want to be charitable and put her in decent, that wouldn't be an entirely incorrect decision to make. That being said, we are still considering the need to pull for her, and I don't think that anyone would really want to go for her because you can do so much better in terms of pyro DPS for your primo gems. Again, Klee's not a bad character, but if we're also factoring the need to acquire her, then she wouldn't be your first or second choice. Next character is going to be Tartaggle's child, whatever you want to call him. I'm actually going to put him in niche. Hear me out. International team is still a very competitive team and it's a very good comfort team for people who have been using him for a while. But that's really his only team. And though it is a general team, it's not like a hyper-specific team compared to someone like, let's say, like Shao. But are people really looking to pull for child? Not anymore. Maybe like back in version 2, version 3 when, the international team was doing extremely well, they would have gone for him, but I don't think that he's exactly in high demand for a rerun. In fact, I don't think anyone cares about his rerun because he got a bunch in the early days and then no one really pulled for him. Those that do have him can continue using him, but people who are looking to go after him, maybe not so much. He's a good example of a character who's still very powerful, but is more for people who already use him and not for people who are trying to get a new team or invest in more carries. Even in regards to opportunity cost, I will say that he did get low-key power crept by Neuvillette. I don't want to say low-key, he got high-key power crept by Neuvillette. And there still is a lot of competition in terms of Bennett, Xiangling, and Kazuha. So I guess basically international team is a solid A-tier team. It is a perfectly serviceable, perfectly competitive team, but there are just a lot more options out there nowadays, especially that the meta has progressed and we have so many more powerful characters. Next one's going to be Zhongli. Zhongli is going to be the first top tier. Casually speaking, he's here. Competitively speaking, he's actually like down here. Zhongli is a cover-all. He is Genshin Impact on easy mode, I keep saying that. But that's really all he does. At the cost of a fair amount of DPS for your team, you have what is essentially internal stability. You never have to worry about dying, you don't have to dodge, you don't have to do anything. You can just turn your brain off, put your shield up, do whatever you want. He's not an optimal character, but he's a very practical character. And you technically could use him for any team that can afford to have a shielding slot, or a team that does not require all 4 party slots to be a specific character. So he's still to this day one of the best characters in the game, especially if we go by pull value and deployment. Albedo, I'm gonna put Albedo in average. He's not really that good anymore. I don't want to say subpar. He's not Chi-Chi tier, but he really doesn't have a best in slot use anymore. If you're running a mono Geo team, for example, and you don't have Chiori, then you can still use him. So that's what I mean by if you lack any of the better alternatives out there. But I don't think that Albedo is exactly a high priority target right now, and he never will be. Ganyu's gonna be indecent. She's okay. In my What Happened to Ganyu video last year, I talked about how she's gotten power crept, not necessarily directly, but in terms of just the wide number of options we have in the modern day, and the fact that freeze and cryo by extension as a whole being not as valuable at the current moment. Her situation is reminiscent of Child, where if you already have her, that's fine, you can keep using her and she can still keep getting you results. But for people who are looking for who to pull, I can say with certainty that she's not a high priority character. She's a top tier waifu, let's make sure we establish that, but until cryo receives some kind of buff or a major overhaul, I think that Ganyu is fine. She's fine. That's it. Next character is gonna be Shao. Shao is gonna be a niche. Listen, he has one of the strongest teams in the game. Shao, Faozan, Shenyun, and Farina. But it's basically just that team. He has one team, and only that team, where he can be powerful. If you have that team, especially if you have C6 Vars, he's, top 5 teams in the game. But it's just one team. And unfortunately, because C6 Vars is almost obligatory to have for this team, the accessibility kind of prevents him from being, top tier. He is top tier, just not in terms of like everyone in the mother should get him. In fact, he's the reason why I have this statement right here where I say niche doesn't necessarily mean bad, it just means that they have one situation or one team and that's all they can function in. He's an absurdly busted character all things considered, so if you want to get him, by all means you should, but there is a pretty high price tag associated with him. Hu Tao's gonna be the next character. I'm gonna put her in excellent. I made a video on her talking about all the ways in which she adapted to the increases in the game's power ceiling, and she comfortably stays in excellent. I don't think she's top tier, mostly because I personally don't think DPS characters are top tier in terms of like pull and deployment value, except for one, and you guys know who it is. But yeah, Hu Tao's a good character, very solid. She kept up in relevance thanks to updates to Hydra supports with Farina and then giving her the pogo stick Hu Tao. She's a good solid attacker and likely will always be, even with the release of Arlecchino. Next one's going to be Eula. Eula's in average. She's usable. She's usable and she always will be. But bluntly speaking, I don't think that she's going to go any higher than that. We can revisit this topic if Physical receives an actual decent support, but for the time being, Eula is just perfectly average. If we want to be technical with her, she's also a niche character, but I don't think that her power ceiling, or I guess value, is quite the same as, let's say, Venti, Klee, Child, and Shell when their niches are tapped into. It's not her fault, Physical just has been neglected for far too long, and I say this as gently as I possibly can, she's just not the most valuable character out there and does require a significant amount of investment to be used, but then you could just take that investment and put it on other characters for better results. Kazuha's gonna be top tier. He's crowd control, he's damage amplification, he's AoE coverage, he's reaction driving, he's, a lot of things. So realistically, if we go by pull value and deployment value, you'll be using him in tons of teams. You'll be using him because he's comfortable and convenient to use. He's just a very versatile character. Ayaka's in a similar spot to Ganyu where it's not really her, it's Freeze and the cryo element at large. She's a good character. Do I think you should go after her for her rerun? Probably not. You could get her if you like her. There's always waifu over meta, but practically speaking, Ayaka has come down quite a bit, and I don't think her internal strengths are enough to put her up here. Yoimiya is going to be an average. She's gotten power crept. She's gotten very power crept, not just because of, she wasn't always the best character to begin with, but version 4 brought in a ton of new pyro DPS characters that, well, initially I warmed up to her back in, 2022 or 2023, she's come back down again. So it's similar to Kuting, where she came back up in the eyes of many, especially when Yelan came out, and then she sort of fell back down, although unlike Kuting, Yoimiya fell off a lot harder. Still usable, like I said with average, usable with significant investment or if you have no one else, but I don't think anyone's going to be pulling for her when her rerun comes because there are just more targets to go for. Raiden Shogun's going to be in excellent. Go after her. She is either a main DPS unit or a sub DPS if you want to use her for Hyper Bloom or any kind of Dendro team. There's a ton of usability for her. You can still use Raiden National. It's not as high demand as it used to be, and it's not as all-covering as it used to be, but you can still use it. Good value, she has a lot of future usability, especially because she's an Archon. Kokomi is also going to be an excellent. A solid healer with good reactive capabilities and can fit into any team comp that requires Hydro. A very simple character, good sustain, decent damage contribution for a healer, good party utility, you really can't go wrong with her. A very stable pick. Aloy, Ito's going to be in niche. He is niche, he's Mono Geo, and Mono Geo, that's it. I really don't know what else to say. He did get a small buff thanks to Chiori, but he's really not anything that special. When built sufficiently and geared up with the right teammates and artifacts and stuff, he's a very powerful attacker. The thing is, similarly to Shell, you have to go out of your way to do this, but unlike Shell, the supports that you can use for him are only for him. You can't use those same units for different characters. Shell does have an exclusive support in the form of Farazan, but you can still use Farina and Shinyu for other teams. Whereas for Ito, Chiori and Albedo and Goro can mostly only be used for him. You can use Chiori for Navia, especially if you have C1, but for the most part, Ito is a very niche character and he will stay that way unless Geo somehow miraculously becomes meta. Shenhe is niche as well. She's the Farazan of Cryo, and As mentioned multiple times in this video, Cryo has not been doing so well, so she's okay. If Cryo gets a resurgence, then so will Shunhe. Yelan is top tier. High damage, good follow-up attacks in terms of her, actual dice. She has a party damage augmentation, or not party, she has an on-field character damage augmentation. Good mobility in terms of her dice, making her a little bit more valuable overworld than, let's say, Xingqiu, and gets a lot better with higher investment. You forfeit all the defensive utility that Xingqiu brings to the table, but you get so much more damage, and right now, her best double hydro pair is herself and Farina for ridiculous amounts of damage. There's a reason why during her first and Hu Tao's second rerun, I believe, it was one of the highest selling banners of all time, because they realized this bitch is really freaking strong to the point where she might actually just be stronger than the DPS she's supporting. Alright, let's move on. Yaemiko is going to be an excellent. She's a good off-field sub-DPS for Electro. You can pair her up with Fischl for 2 Electro off-fielders, or you can just use her by herself and she'll be fine. She's a good character, and until we get more Electro sub-DPS units, she will continue to be one of the best Electro units in the game. Next one's going to be Ayato. Ayato is indecent. The best way I like to describe Ayato is, he's the Honda, he's the Toyota. A good middle-class character, reliable, efficient, gets the job done, may not be the flashiest or highest performing character out there, but he is the Hydro driver to end all Hydro drivers. If you need any Hydro character for any team, you can basically use Ayato. That's the main value of him. Also, my man drinks boba, instant green flag. Next character is going to be Tignati. Tignati is indecent. He's a good character, a spread-oriented DPS. He gets a lot stronger with constellations, and I would say besides Jean, he's arguably the best unit to lose your 50-50 to. Is he anywhere close to being the best Dendro attacker in the game? No, because we all hate them. But like the other standard banner characters, you will have him eventually, so his accessibility is a positive for him. Sino's indecent. He's okay. He's a, Dendro team boy. It's mostly pick your poison between him and Kuting. Kuting's aggravate while Sino can do quick bloom, but realistically, he's not the most meta-defining character out there. He never was. And he is kind of difficult to use. I find that Sino's definitely a victim of overhype. People were expecting a lot of things from him, and he did not deliver enough on them, which is why the community has soured on him over time. But he's still a good character. Do I think you should go after him if he ever gets a rerun? Not really. You can probably do better with like Clorant, but if you have him already, by all means continue using him. Nilou's going to be an excellent. Technically, she's niche, right? In fact, I might actually put her niche. By the way, I'm sorry if you guys hear a lot of humming or like roaring sound in the background because it's in the middle of noon right now and there are landscapers going outside. I'll try my best to edit them out, but if you feel like you hear some kind of like vibrating sound in the background, I'm sorry about that. Anyways, Nilou is a niche character, but unlike Xiao and Ito's niche, Nilou is pretty accommodating, as in you can only use Hydro and Dendro, but you can use so many different Hydro characters and so many different Dendro characters that because of that I feel inclined to put her here, since there are many characters who can pair with her in those 2 categories, despite her only being restricted to 2 categories. For the sake of consistency, I'll put her in niche, but kind of like Xiao, she's like top tier niche in a lot of ways. Very powerful character, and I still think she's one of the best quote-unquote damage dealers in the game. Yes, I consider her a damage dealer because Battleful Bloom Course can only be made with her on the team, regardless of if she's spawning them or her team is. Alright, moving on, we have Nahida, possibly the most valuable character in the game. Dendro's broken, and she is the Dendro to end all Dendros. She's extremely powerful, and if we go by like pull and deployment values, anytime you think you need to use Dendro, she'll decidedly be the #1 choice for that. Okay, Wander's gonna be a niche, very similar to Xiao, where it's Farazan or bust. It's just that he's like here, whereas like Xiao would be here, or like maybe here, right? Like that's where they would be. Wander and Xiao are both niche, but Xiao I would say is definitively the better one of the 2. People initially thought they were interchangeable, but following Xianyun's release, Xiao has taken the top spot over Wanderer. Alright, now we have I'll Hate Them. I'll Hate Them is going to be an excellent. He's one of the best damage dealers in the game. I said that for the top 5 DPS video and the top 10 best characters video, but in my opinion, if you had to choose between him and Nahida, I would go for the latter. But I don't think he's, right up there with these guys, right? He's a damage dealer, and again, barring one exception, I do not consider DPS characters to be top tier in this context, since ultimately, they're all interchangeable, they're all replaceable. I want to clarify that in a similar fashion to the Honkai Star Rail tier list I made a while back, anyone in the top 2 tiers is fantastic and ideally you should go after all of them. So this would be S tier and this would be S plus tier, if that makes sense. Alright, moving on, we have Dia. Dia is going to be in subpar. People have coped really hard with things that could possibly save her, myself included, but we can't fix her, I'm sorry. It's not her fault, she's a victim, but she's not a good character, objectively. Next one's going to be Baiju. Baiju's going to be up top. He is basically Jean, but he can drive Dendro instead of Animo, and in my opinion that's a lot better. Plus, remember he does have shielding, and shielding gives you super armor. Even though yes, the shields he provides are like super minuscule, they can still block 1 or 2 attacks per round, which makes him an incredibly good support. For anything, not just Dendro reactions, you can just bring him alongside Furina and use him for the all-party wide regeneration. Okay, then we have Linny. Linny is going to be an excellent, a very powerful mono pyro hyper carry, and he was the first character to give Hu Tao a run for her money. And prior to Xianyun, I would actually say that he might have been stronger than Hu Tao. We could put him in niche, but who doesn't have Bennett and Xiangling? Unlike Farazan, unlike Goro, Bennett and Xiangling are much more accessible, and Linny's a much higher performing character than the likes of Klee. So if he's on banner, you definitely can't go wrong with pulling for him. He's a good character, a very strong one, and unlikely to get power crept anytime soon. We have Neuvillette. He's the exception. When I say that there are no DPS characters in top tier except one, that's him. He's not the strongest character in the game. In regards to the maximum DPS a character can pump out, he's not the best. However, he's the most brain rot character in the game. You just turn your brain off and use him, and you win. He does everything. He can kill bosses, he can do AoE chambers, he can do single target chambers, he has good uptime, he's super easy to build, super easy to team up with. You can use him for anything that isn't Hydro immune. He's just him. Alright, Risley. Risley's gonna be indecent. Him, Ganyu, Ayaka, all kind of in the same thing. Consistent cryo DPS and a fun playstyle, but once more, cryo is not a hot topic right now, no pun intended. He looks weak in respect to the other version 4 units, but when compared to the entire roster as a whole, he's actually pretty damn good. It's just again, cryo has fallen off a lot. Furina's gonna be in top tier. One of the best buffers in the game, one of the best off-field Hydro DPSs in the game, and though she might be more restrictive in party, the payoff is unbelievable. She power spikes through constellations, arguably the most out of any character in the game, so if you get C1 on her, C2, C3, C4, she'll become an absolute beast and just completely carry teams. For crying out loud, she can give so much DPS to the party that Hu Tao actually wants to forgo her low HP passive just to have her in her team. Also don't forget that because of her inclusion, a number of characters have completely been changed in terms of value, like Jean. Moving on, we have Navia. Navia is going to be an excellent. Very much like Linny, she's a gimmicky playstyle, but a very strong character with a lot of practical usability. She's not a must-have per se, but definitely a high-value character who can work with any support who can give her Crystallize. Xianyun. Xianyun's gonna be top tier. Xianyun is an all-party-wide healer, she's a VV shredder, she has fantastic overworld exploration mobility, and her ultimate, in a similar fashion to Furina, has enabled a lot of characters to find a new playstyle to make them meta again, like Diluc, or was a significant buff to a lot of characters like Shao and Hu Tao. Initially, a lot of people consider her interchangeable with Jean, and kind of she is if you're looking in terms of Furina, but because Xianyun can do more than just be an enabler for Furina, I think that puts her in top tier. Alright, then we have Chiori. Chiori is gonna be in, I would say decent. I don't think, or maybe niche. She would be decent tier, but I would put her in niche because she's only for Mono Geo or Navia. But that's just Geo. A good character, you shouldn't really go out of your way to get her, but if you do have her already, then do invest in her. She's a sizable upgrade in damage, overall Beto for Mono and Geo teams. So in that respect, if you're an Ito main, Chiori will absolutely be an upgrade for your team. Arlecchino is going to be an excellent. She might potentially have the highest DPS ceiling in the game, but it's not so high to the point where I put her in top tier. I put Neuvillette in top tier not for his DPS, but for his all-purpose coverage. I mean, granted, he does have a lot of DPS, but for like most other characters like Hu Tao, or I'll hate them, or Arlecchino, they're all within a similar ballpark of each other, and don't really have the same kind of coverage that he does. So if I were to be, full bias, I would put her here, but Arlecchino is, in fairness, not that much better than the rest of the competition. She is better than them, but in terms of pull and deployment value, she's just another DPS. Okay, we have 2 more to go, and then let's put Clorinde. Clorinde is going to be an excellent. She's definitely a step above Keqing and Sino. Definitely a step above them. Clorinde does have self-sustainability, which is important because that enables you to go an extra offensive support, who then can supplement her DPS even more. So she is a step above those two. I know it looks weird to have these two characters right next to each other. People are going to be like, why'd you put Arlecchino and Clorinde in the same tier? We're talking about pull and deployment value, not necessarily complete strength. Clorinde is a pretty good character, all things considered. I know in my video on her I was pretty critical, but I wasn't critical about the fact that she was weak. The main complaint I had with her was not her strength, because she has tons of it. It was that she was just another electro driver like Kuting and Sino, so I felt like that was a missed opportunity for her, but in terms of practical strength, she's incredibly strong and possibly one of the best electro characters in the game right now, next to Shogun Official. Alright, we have one more character to go. We have Sishun. Sishun is going to be an average. She's okay. How do I put this? All she really does is heal and do hydro damage. She does have an all-party white heal, which means you can use it with Farina, but the main reason why Kokomi is so strong is because of her consistent application in tandem with her healing. Sishun's also a battle healer where she heals and does damage, but she's not that much better than Kokomi. Maybe I might be harsh in putting her down here, I could put her here instead, but my problem with her is that she's kind of redundant as a character. If you want to have a character with a very similar playstyle to someone who already exists, for that to not be a bad thing, they have to be an upgrade to the existing character. But Zichun is kind of a downgrade to Kokomi. Is it a big enough downgrade for her to not be here? Debatably, I'm not sure. I am putting her here. Maybe a few months down the road I'll have a change of heart and put her here, but for now I think that she's kind of disappointing as a character. She's the most adorable character in the Genshin universe to ever exist, period. But practically speaking, Hydro is an extremely stacked roster, and true to this category, you can use her, but most people have many of these characters, and so I don't think people will really care for her, myself included. I'm not gonna pull for her. That leaves us with just Emilia. Full transparency, at the time of writing this, Emilia has not been released because we're still in 4.7. So what I'm gonna do is similar to the Honkai Star Rail tier list. When she does come out, you can check the pinned comment and I'll leave my assessment in there. But yeah, that's going to be it. That wraps up the list. It's a very top-heavy tier list, but understandably so, we only rated the 5-star characters. As per usual, this is not objective fact, it's my opinion, and though I did have this list peer-reviewed by many theory crafters, this is still mostly my perspective, although I feel like this tier list isn't too controversial, but as always, if you disagree with me, you're welcome to share your thoughts in the comments down below. For now, if you enjoyed the video, it would be great if you left a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and if you play Honkai Star Rail, check out my Honkai Star Rail tier list video if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.